The old Jeep rumbled along the dirt track, the trees pressing in close on either side like watchful sentinels. Sunlight barely pierced the canopy, leaving the woods in a perpetual, eerie twilight. My name's Jamie, and I decided a couple of months ago that I needed to unplug. Life in the city had become a constant hum of noise and stress, a feeling of being perpetually watched that I couldn't shake, even in my own flat. My friend, Chloe, agreed to join, mostly because she figured it would be a fun adventure, a way to escape her own particular brand of urban chaos. The spot I'd chosen was deep in the woods, a place I'd found online described as remote and off-grid. Perfect. We drove for miles without seeing another car, the isolation initially feeling like a cleansing silence. But after an hour or so, the quiet started to feel heavy, oppressive. It reminded me of that unnerving silence just before something bad happens. We finally reached the trailhead, less a trail, more a barely there indentation in the undergrowth. We parked the Jeep well out of sight and started unloading our gear. Setting up camp felt like a small victory against the creeping unease. We found a decent clearing, relatively flat, far enough from the faint track we'd followed. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, we got the tent up. The air grew colder quickly, a sharp bite that made me wish I'd packed another layer. As darkness truly fell, the woods around us seemed to come alive with sounds, the rustling of leaves, the snap of twigs, the hoot of an owl. Normal forest noises, I told myself. But intertwined with them were other sounds, faint and harder to place. A distant humming. Was it just the wind? Or maybe water? We built a small fire, the flickering light offering a thin shield against the encroaching dark. We talked, ate, and for a while, the unsettling feeling receded. Around midnight, Chloe went into the tent, already tired. I stayed by the fire, nursing a lukewarm coffee, listening to a downloaded podcast, the static-filled voices a strange comfort in the wilderness. That's when I heard it clearly, not the usual night sounds. Footsteps, soft, light, but distinctively like someone walking, not an animal. They weren't coming towards the fire, but seemed to be moving around the perimeter of our clearing. My heart started to pound. I froze, straining to hear over the crackling fire. Chloe was asleep in the tent. Should I wake her? The footsteps stopped. A heavy silence descended, the kind where you can feel the presence of another person just existing in the room, or in this case, the woods. My skin prickled, goosebumps rising on my arms. Then, a sound that chilled me to the bone. Whistling, a slow, off-key tune, somewhere beyond the firelight. It wasn't a cheerful whistle. It was exploratory, like someone casually looking for something or someone. My body locked up, just like that account of Ryan in the woods. I couldn't move, could barely breathe. The whistling stopped. Then, the footsteps started again, closer this time, circling the tent. I could hear the crunch of leaves and twigs right outside the fabric. This wasn't just a deer or a fox. This was deliberate. Adrenaline surged, finally breaking the paralysis. I fumbled for my phone, the screen light blinding for a second. No signal. Of course not. I had my knife, but it felt pathetic against whatever was out there. I whispered Chloe's name, urgently, repeatedly. She stirred, mumbling groggily. Is it my turn? Turn for what? Had I said something about keeping watch? In my panic, I must have. Chloe, wake up. Someone's outside. I hissed. It took her a second, just like in that camping story, but when she came to, she heard it too. The soft steps, right outside the tent. We scrambled to find our modest self-defense items. My knife, a small can of pepper spray. We zipped the tent flap shut completely, plunging us into near total darkness inside. The footsteps paused right by the tent door. I held my breath. I could hear Chloe's ragged breathing beside me. Then, a different sound. Scratching. Long, deliberate scratches against the tent fabric. It went on for what felt like an eternity. They want us to open the door, Chloe whispered, her voice trembling. It was the same unsettling feeling described by the person hearing the tapping on the glass. A strange, twisted invitation. But at the same time, a voice in my head, like my dad's, screamed, "Stay put, don't do it." We listened to that inner voice. The scratching stopped. The footsteps moved away again, fading back into the surrounding woods. We lay there in the dark, wide awake, straining to hear any return. The hours dragged on 5. Every rustle of leaves, Every distant snap sent jolts of panic through me. We stayed like that until the first hint of gray light appeared in the sky. As soon as there was enough light to see by, we practically burst out of the tent. The fire was dead. We scanned the clearing, seeing nothing out of the ordinary. No footprints immediately around the tent, which struck me as odd. Whoever it was must have been careful. Or maybe they weren't walking normally. The thought of bare feet in these cold woods sent a shiver down my spine, reminding me of that unsettling detail from the house near the woods. We packed everything up in a frenzy. The calm we had sought had been shattered, replaced by a raw, primal fear. We didn't even bother with coffee. Just shoved everything into the Jeep and got the hell out of there as fast as possible. Driving back down the track, the woods still felt menacing, like something was watching from behind the trees. We didn't see anyone, but the feeling persisted. We reached the main road, pushing the Jeep way over the speed limit, needing distance, needing to be back in the safety of houses, away from people who were just too scary. We agreed not to talk about it much on the drive home, but the experience hung heavy in the air. When we finally pulled up to Chloe's street in the suburbs, the familiar houses felt incredibly reassuring. I dropped her off and drove the short distance to my own place. The next few days were rough. Sleep was impossible. Every creak of the old house made me jump. The feeling of being watched from the city was back, intensified tenfold. I kept reliving the sounds, the footsteps, the whistling, the scratching on the tent. A week later, sorting through my gear, I noticed something missing. My favorite hiking boots. Strange. I distinctly remembered packing them. I searched the entire house, turned out the Jeep. Nothing. Then, I remembered something else. The tent, the morning after. Had we really looked carefully? We were in such a panic. That evening, while making dinner, I heard a noise from the back garden. A soft, insistent tapping on the glass of the patio door. I froze. My heart hammered against my ribs. I crept to the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. Nothing there. Just the dark garden. I told myself it was just a branch hitting the glass in the breeze. But the tapping continued, steady, rhythmic. It didn't stop for nearly an hour. I stood there, rigid with fear, unable to move. It felt like that invitation again, daring me to open the door. But I remembered the voice in my head, the dad's voice. Stay put. I didn't sleep well that night. The tapping eventually stopped, but the silence that followed was just as unnerving. The next morning, I cautiously checked the back garden. Nothing obvious. No footprints in the damp grass, though the ground was pretty firm. The missing boots bothered me. Why would someone steal just my boots from the campsite? It didn't make sense for a random thief. And if it was the person from the woods, why? What did they want? A few days later, I was running errands in town. As I pulled into the car park of the supermarket, I noticed a car parked nearby that seemed out of place. An older model, dark-colored SUV, like a Tahoe. It was idling, and I had the distinct feeling the person inside was watching me. I got out, trying to act normal, but kept a wary eye on it. As I walked towards the entrance, the SUV slowly pulled out and drove away. My paranoia was getting out of control, I told myself. But the next day, the same thing happened. I was driving home from work, a route I took every day, when I noticed a dark SUV following me a few cars back. It wasn't tailgating, just keeping a steady distance. I changed lanes. It changed lanes. I took a different turn than usual, heading into an unfamiliar residential area. The SUV followed. Panic flared. This wasn't a coincidence. This felt like deliberate pursuit, just like the black car that might have followed the friends from the diner. I pulled over to the side of a quiet street. The SUV stopped further back, just idling. I fumbled for my phone, debating calling the police. But what would I even say? A car is driving the same way I am. They'd think I was crazy. I waited. The SUV waited. After a few tense minutes, I saw the driver's side window roll down slightly. I couldn't see the driver clearly, just a shadowed figure within. They didn't gesture, didn't call out. They just sat there, watching. The feeling of being observed was suffocating. Suddenly, an idea struck me. Maybe it was related to the boots. A bizarre, twisted way of returning them? It was a desperate thought, born of fear and confusion. I grabbed a pen and paper from my glove compartment, scribbled a note. Are you the person from the woods? What do you want? Did you take my boots? I held it up to the window for a second, then slowly lowered it. The figure in the SUV remained still for a moment. Then, I saw a hand emerge from the window, holding something. They tossed it onto the road and drove off quickly, disappearing around the next corner. Trembling, I got out of my car and walked over to where the object had landed. It was a pair of my hiking boots. My missing boots, lying in the middle of the street. But there was something else tucked inside one of them. A small, crudely drawn picture. It showed a stick figure, labeled Jamie, sleeping in a tent. And another stick figure, much larger, standing outside the tent, holding something that looked vaguely like a stick or maybe a knife. My stomach turned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a message. They knew who I was. They had been there, outside the tent. They had watched me sleep. I called the police immediately this time. I explained everything, the camping incident, the missing boots, the SUV, the drawing. I showed them the drawing, the boots. They were sympathetic, but as with other similar cases, there wasn't much they could do initially. No clear crime had been committed beyond possible trespassing, which was hard to prove after the fact. They took my statement, promised to patrol the area more frequently, and advised me to be cautious, maybe install security cameras. The feeling of being watched never left me. The tapping on the glass returned intermittently, always late at night. Sometimes, I would hear faint footsteps outside my house. Once, I swore I saw a masked figure leaning against a tree at the edge of my garden. It felt like a twisted game, a form of intimidation. I considered moving, but the thought of the effort, the cost, and the possibility that they might just follow me felt overwhelming. I reinforced the locks, checked windows constantly, and always carried pepper spray when I left the house. Every unknown number calling my phone sent a jolt of fear through me. The police couldn't find the SUV's owner based on my vague description. They checked local records for anyone matching the disturbing elements I described, but nothing concrete came up. It was a dead end. Months passed. The incidents became less frequent, but the fear lingered, a constant, low-level hum beneath the surface of my life. I stopped going out alone at night. I avoided quiet streets. I felt like a different person, forever marked by that encounter in the woods. Then, about a year after the camping trip, something else happened. I was online, scrolling through local news articles, when a headline caught my eye. Bizarre discovery in local woods. The article described how hikers had stumbled upon a strange sight deep in the forest, an area filled with dozens of shopping carts tied to trees, some mangled and suspended, along with strange objects and signs of recent fires. It sounded exactly like the kind of ritual site described in Ryan's story. My blood ran cold. It was the same woods where Chloe and I had camped. The article didn't mention anything about boots or drawings or anyone being seen, but it confirmed that there was something deeply unsettling happening out there, something that wasn't just random vandalism. It felt ritualistic, cult-like, and the people involved knew how to find others, knew how to watch, knew how to make their presence felt. I never did get a clear explanation for what happened. The police investigation into the shrine also seemed to hit a wall. Whoever was out there, they were careful, leaving behind bizarre signs but little concrete evidence of who they were or what they wanted. I still live in my house, but I'm always on edge. The city feels less safe now than the remote wilderness did before that trip. Because the real terror wasn't just being in a scary place. It was the realization that the scary places and the people who inhabit them aren't always confined to the woods. Sometimes they follow you home, and sometimes you never truly know why you were targeted or if they've truly gone away. People are just too scary.